Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing all right. We're still another mountain episode here in the Sierra Nevadas.
Yep.
It's beautiful weather.
Beautiful
It's
weather.
warmer than it is in the
climate.
coast of the Bay Area.
I was going to say, not too hot, not too cold yet.
We're getting sunlight.
Just a touch of sunlight as we fade into fall a little bit. And as we fade into fall a little bit, we are getting closer and closer to football season. And actually, the Packers
there are
play.
games going on. I think there are games going on right now.
I was going to say, just finishing up right now, probably. But the Packers play in 2 days, Dad. First preseason game against the Browns. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the things specifically, not for this game, but over the course of the preseason, what we're looking for, like what we're looking for on the field, what we're looking for in terms of position battles. We each brought like a couple things to the table in terms of like what we're keeping our eye out for that we think maybe you should keep your eye out for as well, because there's a lot of stuff brewing in camp right now for the Packers. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be decided in these coming 3 preseason games. Matt LaFleur said recently in his presser that they're going to play the starters a little bit, and he obviously said, there's going to be some risk with that, but knock on wood. But there's, some benefits to it too. They felt like last year when they played them, they came out a little stronger in week 1 because of it. So we're going to get to see a lot of players play during this preseason, Dad. And I think it's exciting. And I think we each have some things that we're really looking forward to seeing. But before we get into that, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. If you like what you hear here today, come subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. So, it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. We even put all our episodes out on YouTube. So go check them out there and subscribe there as well. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think. And then, follow us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. We tweet out whenever we have new episodes out. Tweet out whenever we have data for episodes. We do a lot of research for these episodes, so we often tweet out the numbers we have associated with it. Any other content from other Packers content creators we find interesting, roster updates, injury updates, pretty much one-stop shopping for everything Titletown. So, go check us out there on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. But Dad, anything else you want to touch on there before we kind of get into it? I guess there are a few things we should talk about, huh?
Oh, well, first I'd like to thank all of the people who are in person at practice for
bringing us all this information.
The play-by-play, the lineups, the bootleg videos.
Yep. Shout out to the fans who are sneaking phones in. We love it. We love to see it. You're making it a little bit easier for the rest of us, so we appreciate your brave sacrifice. But yeah, so shout out to all the beat reporters bringing us this information. But before we get into talking about what we're interested for the preseason, we should probably give a little bit of an injury update. And first, actually, a little bit of a roster update, because the Packers did make a few moves since the last time that we talked. They cut quarterback Jacob Eason, cornerback Don Callis with an injury designation, and then wide receiver Rory Starkey with an injury designation as well. And the corresponding moves were defensive end Brevin Allen, who was class of 2023 from Akron, with a relative athletic score of 9.32. Shout out to Kentley Platty for that. They signed kicker Alex Hale, who's a rookie from Oklahoma State. And then they signed defensive end Zach Morton, class of 2023, relative athletic score of just 6.49. He played a little bit for the Chargers last year, but so beefing up the defensive line a little bit, Dad, and adding a kicker to the kicker competition, that part was a little bit weird to me just because, it's a little late in the game for him. It's going to be kind of tough for him to make a name for himself, don't you think?
I guess after that windy day where they both did poorly, it's like, we need another kicker.
Which is interesting.
LaFleur said, we're not doing it because we're unhappy about how they're performing.
Yeah, and he also said, they asked him, what do you think about how your kickers handled the kicking in the wind? And he was like, it was pretty much a tornado out there, and we're never, ever going to have to kick in those conditions. And he's like, obviously, you want to see them drive the ball well. It's about the process. But he didn't seem too, beat up or broken up about the fact that, they didn't have a great day. They both went 4 of 7, I think, in the wind, if I remember correctly, which, obviously not ideal. And obviously the kicking competition is a bit in flux right now. I think Joseph's probably in the lead. Wouldn't you say so?
I would, but as it creeps a little closer together, I think Carlson had a slightly better day 2 practices ago, and so I got the numbers a little closer. And then today, I think they both
went 7 of 7.
6 for 6.
Both 7 of 7, I think.
Yeah,
or no, 6 of 6. You're right. Yeah, both 6 of 6. But either way,
the percentages are a little closer. Carlson has crept back above 80%. I would hope that they would go with reality and not what they hope.
Yeah. When the team was still,
I think if they get really close together, if they end up if Carlson and Joseph end up tied, they're going to go Carlson. You just know it. But the question is, how much does Joseph have to win by to win the job?
Yeah, when the team was still when last year when the team was we're really young, we don't know what we have, we're going to, take this year a bit of a development year. it made sense to have Carlson as a bit of a developmental project at kicker, where it's like he has some things to work out. He wasn't a very good college kicker at all, but we see like he's got a big leg. He could probably work on some of his technique stuff. But now that you're a team with actual aspirations, having some more steadiness there, even if the ceiling is not as high, I would prefer if they went Joseph at this point in time. That's just my take on the situation.
Yeah. I mean, Joseph is looking better. I think even when he's making it, like there was the one that a couple practices ago, they like blew the whistle to dead. But Carlson made it. I think they both made it when the whistle blew dead, but Carlson's like right down the middle. And Joseph's is right down the middle, and Carlson just barely makes it in to the point where some people inside they weren't even sure if it went in or not. And I feel like there's been a lot of these reports of like a lot of Joseph's kicks are just going right down the middle between the uprights.
Yeah, and obviously it's not the same as a game scenario, but we can only go off the information we have, and it doesn't seem like there's a difference in distance in practice. Like they're both seemingly kicking about the same from 50+ yards in practice. And Joseph's just been better, like you said. He's been much better actually. He's been like 10% better, which is a big scale there.
It's closer now. It's maybe like 5. Is it 5%? 7%?
I think it's like 89% to 80%. I'm pretty sure it's like still a 9% gap.
Oh, is it 89? Because Carlson has crept above 80.
Yeah,
I guess that's right. That's like 80,
a low,
89. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's a low bar though. Like creeping above 80 is a pretty low bar.
It's Hale who's at 84.
Yes, because he's 5'6", I think.
Right.
Yeah,
and not Carlson. Carlson's like 80.2 or something after today's 6 for 6.
Not great, Bob.
Something like that.
Not great. But anyway, so those have been the roster moves, though, and a little bit of a kicker competition notes. And talking a little bit about the injuries, though, as we go into preseason. So Jordan Morgan is the first-round pick out of Arizona, offensive lineman. He had kind of, locked down a little bit that right guard job, it looked like. But he is going to miss about a week with a shoulder, it sounds like. Josh Jacobs, though, after missing a couple days, is back on the field, so that's good. Enigbare had a hamstring injury, but he's back as well. Zach Tom is back doing team drills at right tackle, which is great. For a while, he was just doing individuals, so it's good to see him back out there. And then Tucker Kraft was activated off the PUP list, so good to see him out there. He's not going to be doing team drills for a while, and he actually said in his locker room availability that he does not expect to play in any of the preseason games. And his goal is just be ready for Brazil and like week 1. Like that's his only goal right now.
That sounds right in terms of timeline, considering how long Tom went before he was in team drills, that you wouldn't expect Kraft to be ready for a preseason game when they're already starting.
Yeah. And then Carrington Valentine is still out with a hamstring injury. Edgerrin Cooper is still out with a hip injury. And then there are a few more players who are out as well, including Donovan Jennings, Dimitri Stanley, Keyshawn Banks, Deslin Alexander as well are also out. And then a few players have missed a couple games here or there. We did have a scare today, though, Dad, at the end of practice with Jordan Love. I don't know if you saw this, but he got hit on the last play of the game and was grabbing his leg a little bit, and was the medical crew came over and like talked to him a little bit. He jogged off the field, knock on wood that it's not anything serious, but definitely a little bit of a scare there, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. So he did give 2 thumbs up to the reporters on the sideline.
Did he? That was Christian Watson, I think. I don't think that was Love.
Oh, no, that was the Watson one. You're right. That was the Watson from the day before.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know if there's anybody who knew anything about...
yeah, so we're going to keep our eye on that, because that's obviously really scary when, pretty much the whole of your team is on one person's shoulders, and it's obviously scary when they're getting checked by medical personnel. But that was a slight scare, and, maybe impacts the lineup on Saturday, maybe with, Matt LaFleur said they're going to get the starters some reps, but not if anyone's dealing with anything. So maybe they won't be having them out there.
Yeah, and I was already feeling nervous about Love being out there when Tom is going to play, and now Morgan's not going to play. So 2 of the starting offensive linemen won't play. And so you're going to put Love behind a couple of backups?
Yeah. Andre Dillard and Sean Ryan on the right side of the line? That doesn't seem like
on the right side of the line.
Yeah, doesn't seem like a great idea to me either. I would not be putting Love out there until you have the full offensive line or until week 1. But that's just my take. I'm obviously anxious by nature, and that's just how I am. But, knock on wood that everything goes well. But anything else in terms of that injury report that you wanted to talk about, Dad? Anything you wanted to touch on there? Obviously, it sucks for Cooper missing time. Also, Tyron Hopper was out today. I forgot to mention with that ankle injury.
Linebacker.
So both of their rookie linebackers, unfortunately, are going to probably miss Saturday's game, which is tough.
Yeah, we're hoping to get a look at those guys. They'll have to go deeper to the bench. They do have a few other linebackers.
And hoping
But
for
one
them
thing
to get
about the
some reps
injuries,
to just,
I want to get them to get reps and see how they're
yeah.
playing and see how they do in a game situation. But with the injury, you can see why they had a couple of their edge players who were hurt. And so that's, we think anyway, why they signed Allen and Morton. So they need players to play in the preseason.
Yeah.
They don't want to be playing any of their top line rotation players
for the whole game, exactly.
For too much of the game.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with that, with Banks and Alexander both being out. But let's move on to what we're looking for in these preseason games. We each brought a few things to the table. Dad, what is one thing, though, that I'll let you start. What is one thing that over the course of these 3 preseason games coming up that you are keeping your eye on particularly because you think it's going to have a big impact on how the season goes as a whole?
Yeah, so you could say I cheated again and picked 2 things, really. How is the run game performing on offense and on defense? So, with very little live tackling, it's really hard to evaluate how good the run defense or the run offense are in regular practices. So we might get a feel for this in the joint practices as well, when things are a little bit more competitive and emotions are, running high sometimes. You just look at the Lions Giants had a couple brouhahas breakouts
1 or 2
during practice this week.
They seem to be inevitable. Yeah, and that's why the Packers have decided to only do 1 joint practice with each team that they're doing. They're never going to a second game.
The more days in a row you play against the same guys when people are fighting for their jobs, things get hot.
Yes. But so what in the run game are you looking at particularly? Are you looking at the running backs? Are you looking at the blocking? Are you looking? You said offense and defense. Let's start with talking about the offense. What are you looking at on offense?
Right. So I think the preseason games will give us, the fans, the first real look at how they're performing. And so I want to see how the run blocking is going on when you're actually, driving and trying to sustain blocks or really hitting people downfield. And also the tackle breaking and avoiding tackles by the running backs themselves. Something you don't really see when it's like, whatever, a 2-hand touch thud, whatever.
Yeah. They're not really playing somebody down there right now. Yeah.
And so I really want to see how Jacobs and Lloyd compete against live tackling. Jacobs like a power runner, breaking tackles is part of his game, and Lloyd with his elusiveness, which was elite for USC and USC.
Yep.
I'd like to see how he does against professional linebacker safeties. Can he make somebody miss and break off a long run?
Yeah, and speaking of the run blocking, I'm actually interested to see if with, we've had Aaron Jones as the main running back for so long. With a new running back come in, are they gonna change schematically what they're trying to do in the running game? Are they gonna go to more inside gap power scheme stuff, which they did a little bit last year? Are they gonna go to more of that and lean into that because that's something that Jacobs is a little bit better at? Are they gonna do some more I formation stuff, maybe with Tyler Davis as the fullback, because Jacobs has run behind a fullback a lot before? Are they going to change schematically who they are as a running team with this change at running back? Because, we've had the same running back for so long. Is it just that this is how LaFleur likes to have his running game, or is he going to cater his running game more to the personnel? And that's something in the offensive running game I'm looking at as well.
That is a very good point. Something I hadn't really considered is what kind of blocking schemes they use. And I don't know for the offensive line what kind of run blocking schemes the individual players might be better at. And I haven't heard anything really about what kind of blocking schemes they're using in practice. And can you even tell when they're just kind of running into each other gently?
I think that's also one of the things that the reporters are not allowed to talk about. I don't think they're allowed to talk about specific scheme things. They do have, I would say if their interior was Elton, Myers, Morgan, all 3 of those guys are very capable pullers. So I think that is leans itself into the ability to at least run some gap and power stuff. All of them are really good movers in space. That's especially for their size. So that's definitely something there where I think that's an opportunity there for them. But yeah, like you said, how they look run blocking, what kind of run blocking they're doing, how the backs look, that's all really interesting. Anything else on that offense? Because I think the defense, running defense is going to be very interesting too, because we've never seen this many people in the box before, it looks like, based on family night.
Right. And the other thing about the run offense is they're going against what on paper are good defenses in Baltimore and Cleveland for 2 of the games, who are the number 1 and number 2 defense by DVO last year. DVOA. I think I left out a letter. DVOA last year. And they're also solid against the run at 7th and 4th, respectively. So
and
I
they're
don't
not
know how
play...
much it's going to carry over. I haven't heard if they're going to play any starters at all.
They have pretty decent depth, like for both. Both of them have pretty decent depth, though. So I think it's going to be it's still going to be a good competition to go against, I think.
Yeah, and so I want to see how they go against probably a decent defensive scheme anyway. Teams that have a good defense, and can their skills that we hope they have will translate to being on the Packers do against live defense. And then on defense, I want to see particularly how their tackling and run stopping by the D-line and linebackers look on defense. So they'll get a new scheme, more people in the box, fewer defensive front, as it were, if you count the edge rushers, but more linebackers and more aggressive going upfield style that we expect to see. How will they do?
I was going to say, and they asked Adam Stenovich, the Packers offensive coordinator, what was different about Hafley's scheme, and he said defensive backs in the box. So with more bodies in the box, is that going to help us in the run? I would hope that would help us in run defense, but only time will tell. And obviously, preseason, none of these coordinators are going to really show much of their hands. It's going to be very vanilla 4-3, very standard stuff. But I wonder how much they're going to bring, because we saw in a couple practices, they were bringing Isaiah McDuffie down in an under front as the 5th guy in the front. I wonder how much of that they're going to do. So I do think it's a good point. How is the run defense going to look? Because this is going to be the biggest schematic change we've seen for the Packers defense. And we've talked about this before, but since Dom Capers came to town and switched from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So it's going to be, I think, a bit of a shock to the eyes at first, watching this defense play. Hopefully a good shock to the eyes. But yeah, no, it's going to be.
And I'd really like to see how, tackle breaking versus, tackle completion is going on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. It's going to,
so
I think
that's a bit of watching the individual players and what you can watch in front of the individual performances versus the scheme.
Yeah. For me, something that one of my first one that is actually very similar, so it ties into that I'll touch on, is I'm interested in the running back 2 battle. Coming into camp, I think, or coming into the offseason at least, I think, both you and I, and probably the majority of Packers fans were probably thinking, they brought Dillon back. He might not even make the team. It's going to be clearly Jacobs 1, Marshawn Lloyd, and then Dillon fighting for that 3rd spot. Through camp, I would say it seems like Dillon is firmly entrenched as the running back 2. Wouldn't you say?
That's the reports from everything we hear. It's he's looking like the best of his career in
That's
the pros.
What they're saying. Best shape of his life, Dad. Best shape of his life.
But not just the way he looks, but actually the way he's running. More speed, more burst.
Yeah, and we'll see if that holds in games, but I don't think it's set in stone yet, is all I'm saying. I don't think it's it's over, the competition is done. I think if Lloyd has a good preseason, and if Dillon maybe, falters a little bit, I think Lloyd can still overtake him, because I think his explosivity is a really valuable, trait to this offense, which really struggled to generate explosive runs when Aaron Jones wasn't playing last year. But obviously, I think I'm a little surprised that Dillon is entrenched as the running back 2 right now. And I'm just interested to see if there's going to be any changes there. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on in terms of the run game. And it kind of dovetailed nicely into what you were saying, or out of what you were saying.
Yeah, I would agree that Dillon looks like the current number 2 based on how they, and it didn't hurt that Lloyd missed some time. Yeah, at the beginning of training camp either.
Yeah, but he's had actually, since he's been back, I would say what seems like a pretty good camp. He flashed as a pass catcher today, pretty well. He had a couple nice catches. He's broken off a couple of explosive runs. He's looked explosive in the few clips that we've gotten to see. And so I'm excited to see it, live. And I'm also excited to see if he can hold on to the ball with live tackling, because that's going to be the big thing for him. And because he hasn't had live tackling yet,
that could be
going to be able to hold on to the ball.
One of your things here. One of your things to watch for.
Can Marshawn Lloyd hold the ball? That's all that matters, is can he hold on to the ball. But no, yeah, so that was my first one. It's a bit of a shorter one.
But apparently his pass pro has been looking okay, better than at least one rep anyway. Got one rep. Complimented for how well he did, and that was a concern going in.
He was I think lower. I think he was in the 20th percentile for PFF pass blocking grade, for whatever that's worth, his last year at USC. So not great. But Ben Simmons, the Packers running back coach, like has a history of developing guys as pass protectors, and I trust him as much as anyone in terms of like getting Lloyd up to a respectable level there. But that was my first one.
I think neither Dillon nor Jones were very good when they first got to the Packers, and both became good pass protectors.
Jones certainly not was like, I mean, he was 190 pounds when he got to the Packers, and that was probably why he was
some structural reasons why he might not have been so great. But he
went from that,
though he didn't really get bigger.
Went from that to blowing up Micah Parsons like 1-on-1 in playoff games. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. But anyway, I'll throw it back to you for your next one. That was a bit of a short one for me, but what's your next thing that you're keeping an eye on in these few preseason games we get?
So here's one that's probably not going to be able to figure out from game number one is what does the linebacker situation look like?
Yeah, so we're not going to get to see, unfortunately, in this one.
We won't really see what's going on with Cooper and Hopper not playing, and like who's going to move into the starters is one of the things we're looking for. So far, it's been Walker, McDuffie, and Wilson in base, and mostly Walker and McDuffie in nickel. But just beyond that, like what percentage of the time are they going to have 3 versus 2 versus 1 linebackers? How often are they going to be in base? How often in nickel, and how often in dime? And who will those players be? The first preseason game will obviously be hard with both Cooper and Hopper out. So I suspect in the first game, there's going to be a lot of Christian Welch, Raylan Goforth, and Christian Young. So Goforth.
And for the listeners at home, he is reading those names off of a list. He did not pull those off the top of his head. I could not have told you. I know Goforth's name. I could not have told you he was a linebacker. I could not have told you that off the top of my head.
I will confess, before I started looking at the Packers roster this afternoon, I was like,
are they only going to have the other linebackers?
Are there any?
I was going to say, I was like,
do they only have 3 linebackers available? They only have like Welch, McDuffie, and I guess Welch, McDuffie, Wilson, and Walker, and that's it.
Yeah.
But no, they have a couple guys, and Goforth he's 2024 class, 7.81 RAS, undersized, but with good speed, good jumps, and good agility, especially 80th percentile in both the 40 and in the short shuttle. And Christian Young is a 2023 class. His RAS is only 4.04. He's as a linebacker, undersized with good speed, but not good agility. And he mostly played safety in college, actually, with a little lining up in the box and some at free safety.
Yeah,
and transitioning over to linebacker.
And then I think
we'll see.
Well, I was going to say that linebacker spot's going to be really hard for those guys to break into, because even before Cooper and Hopper got hurt, every single training camp rep, well, not every single one, but almost every single rep with the ones has been Isaiah McDuffie, Quay Walker, and Eric Wilson. And we've seen some rotation with Hopper, we've seen some rotation with Cooper, but every single first reps have been those 3 guys. And so if you think those 3 are going to make it, and then Cooper and Hopper are going to make it because they're draft picks, are they going to keep more than 5 linebackers? Like most likely these guys like Welch, Goforth, and was Wilson the last one? No, Young, right? Young is the last one. Yeah, those guys are probably battling for practice squad spots, but that's still, valuable. They might get call-ups at some point in the year. And so it's going to be important to keep an eye on them, even if they have an uphill battle to making the 53-man roster.
Yeah, and this is their chance probably with these next couple of games to, audition for both the Packers and the league. Because they'll probably get a lot of snaps, especially in game 1.
Yeah, just a question for you. Are you more surprised by the linebackers being, McDuffie and Wilson ahead of Cooper and Hopper, or are you more surprised that Dillon is ahead of Lloyd?
I'm more surprised about the linebackers.
Yeah, me too.
I thought Cooper would be up to the number 2 linebacker.
I thought it was going to be McDuffie and Cooper fighting soon for 2, but the fact that Wilson is ahead of both of them for 3 is
the one that really
very surprising
to me. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, and to be fair to him and McDuffie, apparently they both looked quite good in camp, but it's still surprising nonetheless that they haven't really gotten either
reports from OTAs about how good Cooper was looking.
And
way back
obviously, maybe if he hadn't had that hip injury, he'd be, starting to get some of those number 1 reps because, at the time he was hurt, like Morgan was still not getting number 1 reps yet either. So it's kind of just maybe how it was going for the rookie so far. And maybe if Cooper hadn't hurt his hip, he'd be back already. But hopefully he'll be back soon. But
yeah. And one more thing I'll be looking for with regard to the linebacker in terms of alignment is, in terms of if they go to dime, the notion is that it's going to be Walker will be the lone linebacker.
Yeah.
on the field, but is Oladapo going to be the dime safety when they go to just one linebacker? They go to dime, especially this week against the Browns when you got all these other people missing. Will we see some Oladapo?
I would love.
He's one of their bigger safeties, and so I think that's why I bring it up. He's got kind of the builds to do a little bit more of that.
I think he's by far their biggest safety, right? Like by a good amount, right? He's like borderline linebacker size, right? He's like 220.
He might be 220. I'd have to look that up.
And he's like 6'4". Yeah, that's a big man right there. But no, that's a really good point. Is like who is going to be that dime safety, and that kind of actually is there anything else you want to touch on with the linebackers? Because that kind of goes into one of my points as well.
No, that was the thing, just about who those players are going to be playing over the preseason and what kind of and how they're going to line them up. Who's going to go where?
Yeah, my next one was also with regards to the safeties, so I'm glad you brought it up. And I'm wondering how they're going to deploy these safeties, because so right now it's Xavier McKinney is safety 1, like that makes sense. Safety 2 right now is a full rotation between Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, and then probably like a little notch below them, Anthony Johnson Jr. I think those two guys are probably starting to separate themselves. But I would say Evan Williams and Javon Bullard have each, based on the reports we're hearing from camp, shown so much to the point where you're going to need to find a way to get them on the field. Like, regardless of who wins that battle, the other one is going to need to, like, they're going to need to find a way to deploy them. And so I'm curious as to how they're going to do, like, are they going to have a bunch of 3 safety looks? Because, you know, it seems like Keyshawn Nixon is locked in as that slot corner, so it doesn't seem like they've given Javon Bullard some reps there in the slot, but it seems like they want Nixon to be that guy. I want to know, because don't you agree that Bullard and Williams have both looked so good that they just need to find a way to get them on the field?
Yeah, they both look really good. So I'm thinking, that this is against what I was just saying about who's going to be in 3 safety looks, or will they have Bullard play some slot to get Williams on the field? Because both Bullard and Williams are making plays, getting interceptions, breaking up passes.
Yeah, and both seem to be picking it up really quickly. Coaching staff seems high on both of them. It's been Bullard starting the past few practices, but they asked Matt LaFleur about it, and he said, no, it's still a rotation there. And not to short Anthony Johnson Jr. at all either, because he's had a pretty solid camp as well, I would say. He's battling with 2 guys who have a lot more draft pedigree than them, and he's holding his own. So I'm really curious to see, so in dime, like you said, you were saying maybe Oladapo, but I'm thinking they have to find a way to get Williams on the field if Bullard wins it, or they have to find a way to get Bullard on the field if Williams wins it, because that competition, I think, is bringing out the best in both of them. And, that's something both Gutekunst and LaFleur said, is competition was the big reason as to why we got so much better as the year went on last year. And I think you're seeing it in the safety room. And I don't think you want to have either of those guys not playing right now. And so I'm curious to see how you're going to find a way to get those guys on the field right now.
Yeah, they're both looking really good. And I'll bet the way Williams is playing is, better than I expected.
Outperforming my expectations for certain. He was, I will, hand up, and obviously we'll still see, it's still very early, but he was the draft pick that I was the least high on in terms of, capital invested for the player that I thought he was. He's seems to be playing much better than my expectations of him were. But yeah, so that was my next thing. Dad, what was your next thing that you're keeping an eye on in these preseason games?
Okay. So one thing, I guess this is about tight ends. You had a little note. Do you want to squeeze in your little bonus note about tight ends first?
Yeah, my bonus note on tight ends was just who's going to win the tight end 3 spot. Me personally, because obviously it's Musgrave Kraft. And then that 3rd spot seems to be, well, last year it was Sims when Tyler Davis was out with the torn ACL, but he's back now. And me personally, I am higher on Sims than Tyler Davis. I'm not particularly high on Tyler Davis. I watched him 2 preseasons ago just not be able to block anybody. And that's pretty much all he's out there for. And he's not nearly the athlete that Sims is, and he's not under contract as long as Sims is, I don't think. So, but it seems like Tyler Davis is ahead of him right now in camp. So I'm curious who's going to win that tight end 3 battle, because I am higher on Sims. The coaching staff seems higher on Davis. Davis is more of a special teams contributor as well. So maybe it's a Bisaccia guy again, which, has gone so well in the past. But anyway, that was all I had on tight ends.
But the reports the last couple of days is that Davis has been blocking really well. At least according to Andy Herman was singing his praises.
Yeah, I think he picked up Gary one time, which I didn't know he had that in him. I could not say I knew he had that in him.
Was that 1-on-1 and Gary? Is that what the tape showed me? He's out on the edge alone with Gary, giving Love a little bit of time to escape and get a throw off.
I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, so I'm keeping an eye on that tight end 3 battle. I'm higher on Sims. I hope Sims wins it, but I think Davis is probably the leader right now.
Yeah, so kind of related to that, one of the things I'm going to be looking for is like, what are their personnel groupings going to be? You also talk about like kind of bland, teams will be bland on scheme, but I'm interested in, 21 personnel versus 11 versus, having no tight ends or running backs in the field. How often do they go empty? And if they line up with 2 tight ends, where are those tight ends lining up? Is one in line and one in the slot, or is one in the backfield like an H-back blocking? Will they go with 2? How often will they go with 2 primarily pass catching tight ends? Have Kraft and Musgrave both on the field at the same time and aligned more like pass catchers than as an extra blocker? Or will they have one who's primarily blocking on a play and the other is a route runner?
And
so
like you mentioned, with the personnel, it's like anytime, because there's the give and take. You're in 12 personnel. It's like, oh, great, we got to get Musgrave and Kraft on the field. It's like, oh, but Jaden Reed is probably coming off the field. It's like there seems to be, it's a bit of a push and pull.
Right. Because they have depth at both tight end and wide receiver now, and so you want to get the most of all of those on the field. So I'm very curious how often they use different alignments and where they're putting those players. Will they go 5 wide with two wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and a running back?
It's definitely champagne problems, but it's going to be hard for them to find a way to get all these guys out on the field, I think.
Yeah, it is. But guys will be fresh, I guess.
Good problem to have.
Sprint all out on every play.
I know, right?
There was this thing I remember. I think what it was a Belichick strategy of, okay, they've got this great corner. I think it might have been against the Jags with Jalen Ramsey, or maybe then they had 2 good corners in Bouye. It's like, okay, you guys just go and run 9 route play after play after play. We'll keep subbing you guys in so you're fresh. You can sprint all out and wear them out by the second half.
Well, have you heard about Matt Harmon, who does the reception perception stuff, who works at Yahoo now?
Yeah, with all the route tree.
He has the concept of a sacrificial X receiver, where you just stick him out by himself at the X, let him get pressed to hell and run like deep vertical routes, and then the rest of your offense can function because at least you have an X receiver who's just like taking garbage routes, essentially. Yeah, garbage man. I mean, that's what Marquez Valdes-Scantling did for a long time for the Packers and a long time for the Chiefs, and I mean, it's a role, and now he's with the Bills, so it's definitely a role.
I think he caught a deep ball for the Bills practice. He popped up on my Twitter feed.
I did see something.
I'm not actively following Bills practices.
I did see something from Bills practice that it's like he's currently fighting for a spot right now, and it's actually not been a super great.
I think he caught a good deep ball today.
Yeah, but anything else on that, or should I go to my last one? I guess I only got one more.
Yeah, but there's a lot of meat on the bone for this one.
I was going to say this was my big one, and I did save the best for last. The O-line depth chart. How is this offensive line depth chart going to shake out? Because I would guess, I haven't done my official 53-man roster prediction, but I'm going to guess about 10 offensive linemen are going to make the team. Does that seems fair?
That seems kind of normal. I expect 10.
Yeah. So let's say it's the starters with Morgan in there at right guard. My question is, first, how does that interior depth shake out? Now, just like obviously, who is the number 1 right guard? It kind of seems like Morgan had taken like a hold of that position before he got hurt, and hopefully he can continue to grow there. It is a new position for him, so obviously nothing's guaranteed, but he looked like he was doing well there. But who's up next along the interior? Is it Sean Ryan? He has not been very good through his first 2 years of his career. Per PFF, of 90 guards last year who played as many snaps as him, he was 64th in pressure rate and 68th in run blocking grade. So well below average in both of those in his second year. And so is he going to make a step in his third year? Maybe, maybe not. I guess we'll see. But is it going to be Sean Ryan? Today he was actually benched for Jacob Monk. Do we want to say benched? Is bench too strong of a word? What are your thoughts?
I would say at least he was initially benched because he had a false start. And
yeah, so for those of you who
Morgan in immediately,
for those of you who aren't religiously following practice tweets like us, so Sean Ryan was in there to start the team period, immediately had a false start, came out, and then did not come back in. And double interesting is Elton Jenkins had a vet rest day today. So they preferred having Royce Newman at left guard and then put Jacob Monk in at right guard. And then Sean Ryan did not see the field again with the ones, it sounds like. It was just Newman at left guard and Monk at right guard. And now I don't know if it's just like, hey, we want to get these guys prepped for Saturday. Like we want to see what Monk has at right guard because he's going to be playing there against the Browns. And like we know what Ryan has there at right guard. Or I don't know if it's like Monk is currently pushing Ryan for that next up on along the interior because, I'm not particularly high on Ryan as a player. I've seen him. I think his feet are a little bit slow. I think he struggles in pass protection. He's got some, some juice as a run blocker in terms of driving people off the ball. Like he's not a total negative as a player. But so I'm keeping my eye on that interior spot because maybe something's happening there. Dad, if you had to, and obviously we haven't even seen Donovan Jennings, who's been hurt for most of camp. And, we haven't seen much of Luke Tenuta with the ones, although I think he maybe got like one snap with them later. But
I can't remember if those are the ones or the twos.
If you had to say handicap the interior of the offensive line right now, how would you expect it to shake out? Because I think it's totally up for grabs right now behind that initial first five.
How do I expect it to shake out, or how do I hope it's going to shake out?
So you can say either. Go whichever way you want.
I'm hoping that Monk looks so incredible that he like grabs it. Okay. As a rookie, he's more unknown.
Well, obviously, I hope Jacob Monk is just an all-pro as a rookie. Yeah, okay, right? All right. Can we be a little realistic, though? Okay, actually, I take it back. You cannot say how you hope. How do you think it's going to shake out? You've lost your privileges in terms of hope. The wish casting went too far.
Did I false start? I got sent to the bench. Do I have to bring somebody in to finish this? But the whole Monk thing made me think about he was struggling a little bit at snapping the ball. I'm like, can we see him at guard? I want to see how he looks at guard.
Yeah.
Where
it's like
the snapping the ball doesn't matter. I want to see.
Why are we not repping him at guard?
Actually, yeah, and so maybe that's part of what was going on here. So I'm kind of excited to see what he can do at guard. And they've been playing Ryan a fair amount at center, it seems to me.
They've been playing him all along the interior. I think that's more of a, that's how they feel about
interior offensive linemen.
I just think that's how they feel about all their interior guys, is they want them to be able to play all three spots.
Yeah. So what I've been, I guess, thinking is probably going to be Ryan. I think Monk has a decent chance of getting ahead of Newman.
Yeah.
And then Newman as the third interior backup. I don't expect a whole lot from Smith or Tenuta.
That does bring me into my next bit, because obviously looking at how that interior offensive line depth shakes out, the exterior offensive line depth is also completely in flux, because right now I would say the backup tackle is a mystery. I mean, it's somehow now
it is an enigma wrapped in a mystery,
surrounded by a legend. But anyway, because the right tackle spot, besides when Tom was missing, when Tom was not with team, it was, and thank God he's back, because the offensive line looks so much better with him out there. But it was
the whole offense looked better with him out there.
Yeah, it was a complete rotation between Andre. Well, initially it was Andre Dillard with the ones, and then that happened for 2 practices, and he could not block anyone. And then they were like, okay, it's Kadeem Telford, and Telford was, I would say, better than expected, but still not great. And then they started repping Caleb Jones in there, and he hasn't looked great either. So they seem to be searching for answers as much as we are in terms of who's going to end up at this backup tackle spot. And, Stenovich has said, Dillard has struggled at right tackle because he's really more of a left tackle. It's like, okay, he was also 38th out of 38 tackles per Warren Sharp in like pass block, I think pressure rate allowed last year. So it's not like he was great and he was playing left tackle. So it's not like he was great at left tackle last year. So don't tell me that, it's only because he's at right tackle, because he was a bad left tackle last year. So, and that was on like the worst offensive line in the league. So, maybe you could argue, hey, he wasn't getting a lot of help like surrounding him, but I would not feel super comfortable with Dillard out there as the next tackle up.
No,
and
not
Telford's
the way he was getting beaten by especially Gary, but others as well. And Igbare, and I think a few others have been getting.
He really struggled in camp. And he's on a minimum, so he might not even make the team. Telford's looked better, but he's a second-year UDFA, so you don't really know what you have there. And then Caleb Jones is, I think, more fun as an idea of like, oh man, what if you had this massive tackle? He looks slow when you watch him play. Like he looks too slow to beat guys who are trying to go around the edge on him. And so I think that backup tackle spot, honestly, the offensive line depth, it scares me a little bit. It scares me. It scares me more than a little bit. I'm a little bit scared about the offensive line depth. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that, say, like a family night, that Caleb Jones got as few chances with the ones as he did. He was clearly behind Dillard and Telford.
Yeah, that was the first time we saw him get reps with the ones at tackle. And I would say it probably has more to do with what they think about how Dillard and Telford are playing than how they feel about how Jones has been playing. I don't know if you share that sentiment, but
Yeah, I guess so. And then we haven't seen anything of Glover.
I haven't seen any Glover. Yeah. I think he's a total redshirt. I think he's a guy who he's going to need a year he's like a year away from being a year away right now.
Yes. He's kind of in year one of the
Josh Nijman
Caleb Jones, Josh Nijman track.
Yeah. And Josh Nijman is like the best success story you can have.
The gold
there.
standard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like clearly they're high on Tenuta because they've kept him on the 53 the last few years. Like even last year when he, I think, missed most of the year for injury, if I remember correctly.
He had the ankle injury in preseason or training camp.
Preseason, yeah.
And then they held him on the roster and didn't expose him to waivers.
Yeah. They kept him on the roster through 53-man cutdowns and then put him on IR so that they could keep him there and maybe even have a chance of having him return too. So
I think they've changed those rules now. Do you know if that rule change is going to affect this year?
I believe so. I think it's this
where
year.
You don't have to hold them on the 53 for a day.
It's such a dumb rule. Such a dumb procedural rule where you just had to do this little song and dance. Yeah.
Just so you can get them back sometime later in the year, even if they're healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. Good to see them fix that little weird thing that you had to do for no reason other than it was in the rule book. But they're clearly or at least they clearly were high on Tenuta. They seem to like Caleb Jones. They've kept him around. Telford and Dillard are ahead of him though, but I don't know. How do you feel about the offensive line depth? I don't feel great about it. Like I said,
I felt so much better about it last year.
Yeah.
I think we've had a couple years now where we had depth and we could, overcome an injury to a player or even two sometimes and hold it together. And that's kind of scary right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, they lost
we've lost
two of their 6 best offensive linemen last year.
Well, it kind of depends on how much you want to count Bakhtiari, even though he only played one game.
True. Yeah, 3 of the 6 then. Because, losing Nijman, losing Runyon, and then Bakhtiari leaving as well. But yeah, they have definitely taken a hit over the last year or two in terms of their depth along that O-line.
And they've replaced them with players who either have not yet lived up to it in Ryan or are just starting their development with the rookies this year. And so they're not ready yet.
And that's scary. And so I'm interested to watching these preseason games. Like, is one of these guys going to seize the job? Is it just going to be like, okay, who looks the most who is giving us the best chance out there? Like, we're going to need to chip with a tight end every time, but at least they're not going to kill us. Like, I don't know. And so that's why I'm keeping my eye on that. But yeah, anything else along the offensive line you wanted to touch on, Dad?
No, that's the main thing. Is one of the reasons why I thought they would pick their second offensive lineman of the draft in more like the 4th round, or even the 3rd, and not wait as long as they did for their second offensive lineman.
Yeah, because right now it's and if Monk continues to make some strides, that'll make me feel a lot better about the interior, but it won't make me feel any better about tackle, because at this point, in my opinion, if a tackle were to, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen, but it's the NFL. It's more likely to happen than it isn't. If a tackle were to miss time, I would feel better about moving one of Elton or Morgan to tackle and bringing in Ryan or Monk than I would having any of Dillard, Telford, or Jones play.
Oh, that's got to be the break glass in case of injury. In case of injury right now is Elton going to tackle on either side, wherever he needs to go. And then they bring in their top interior backup. Because
right now I don't think any of those 3 guys feel like they're ready to play right now. Maybe they can develop a little bit more, but right now it feels scary for them. But Dad, anything else there? Do you have any? You had one more, right? Or no? We
no, that was it. The 3 things I had, but I did want to kind of add some comments on the whole Monk thing and the guard versus center kind of conversation, which hasn't really been had very much, but is kind of an interesting idea, I think.
There's been a little bit less competition along the offensive line than maybe we expected, because I think we expected, more competition at center, and it's pretty much just been Myers there. I think we expected more competition at left tackle. It's just been Walker there. And so maybe, I'm maybe a little surprised by that, although maybe we shouldn't be, like, just looking at who the other names are that we're going to be competing for those spots. So,
yeah, it's like that left tackle competition that was like done, over instantly, which then made the right tackle competition, the right guard competition go pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, I mean, and looking back on it, it's like,
the question really comes down to: would you rather have Walker starting or Ryan starting?
Yeah, and or would you rather have Ryan starting or Myers starting? And it's like, okay, like I feel pretty confident at this point that it's Walker and Myers are pretty far ahead of Ryan, at least at this stage.
It seems so.
But anyway, any parting thoughts you want to impart on our listeners, or should we wrap things up here?
We've got football coming in 2 days. Packers football coming in 2 days.
I think how many times do you think you're going to watch this game?
If the third string guys are on there. Oh,
I will watch.
How many times do you watch this? Like, I remember going back and watching preseason reps of Caleb Jones 2 years ago. It's like, oh, he's looking good here. Let me go back and watch that preseason game to see what Caleb Jones looks like.
I remember doing the same thing for Rasheed Walker because he only played like the one preseason game. I was like, wait,
he got hurt.
I was like, who is that? I was like, who is that guy out there? He looks kind of good. But no, yeah, I'm probably going to watch this game like 3 or 4 times because I'm starving for football. We are so close.
Usually every year about this time, I've already started watching last year's preseason games. A year later,
we need help.
Ooh, what are those deep bench players? They didn't get many snaps during the year, so I don't know what they look like. Let's go back to last year's preseason and see how much they played.
We need professional help. We need some kind of help. But anyway, thank you, listeners, so much for listening. Thank you for checking out the Father Son Packers podcast. Like we said earlier, if you like what you heard here, come subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. We would really appreciate it. Give us 5 stars. We'd really appreciate that. Whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. We'd love to chat ball with you. And then come follow us on Twitter at Father Son Packer. We tweet out, like we said, whenever we have new episodes out. Stats from research from these episodes. Injury reports, roster moves, content from other Packers content creators that we think is great. One-stop shop and everything Titletown. Come check us out. Once again, it's at Father Son Packer on Twitter. Packers play this weekend, so keep your eyes peeled. I think is it 125, Dad?
125 Pacific.
125 Pacific
right, time.
Right. So 325 Central. On Saturday, Green Bay versus Cleveland. So keep your eyes peeled there. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.